Hey guys, welcome to my channel where it is all about hope, healing, and wholeness. As you already know, my name is Shannon, and if you are new to watching this channel or just checking me out to see what this channel is about, I just want to extend a hearty welcome to you. And as you guys already know, the topic that the Lord has been resonating in my heart. Oh my gosh, y'all, I have put it off, but he won't let me put it off anymore. And that is by this time next year. God is saying that by this time next year, many of us, not a few of us, many of us can be in a completely different space, place, life. Our lives can transform. God is saying our lives can be transformed by this time next year. And listen, I don't take it lightly that a lot of people are going through a lot of stuff right now. And that's one of the reasons that I have been so hesitant in putting this out. The Lord has been really illuminating it to me and talking to me about it for the last couple of weeks. But I have really been hesitating because I'm like this. I don't like to throw stuff out there. I don't like to give people false hope. And I'm definitely not trying to put a video up just to be putting a video up. I want to make sure that it can speak to the hearts of people and give people hope. And so when I was talking to the Lord about this or whatever, and he was telling me, he was, basically put it out. I'm like, God, I do not want to do this because this to me is a heavy word. And he was like, well, look at your life. And I'm not even kidding you. My life is completely and drastically different than it was from 1 year ago. Actually, less than a year ago, but definitely a year ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, you are right, God. My life is so different than it was just last year. And so what am I saying? I'm saying that God has more in store for us. He wants to do more with us. And even though the enemy might be attacking you, I am going to be sharing 4 things that all of us can do. And I'm going to be doing this, that we can do so that we can see the transformation, the change, the transition, that he might be talking to you about, that he wants to do in this time, in this season. And so anyway, before I share those 4 things, what I want to do is share a couple of biblical stories that, people in the Bible where he specifically said, God himself said, either through an angel, a prophet, a priest, whomever, this time next year, this will be different. And so the first person that I think about, as it relates to impossible situations and just to kind of get your hope up is Sarah. She was an old woman, and the Bible is very clear in letting us know that under natural circumstances, there is no way that she would have been able to have a baby. But an angel showed up and basically told her husband, you know what, by this time next year, you will have a son. And Sarah laughed. That's how hopeless the situation was with her. And I'm saying this only because, again, I know that a lot of people have situations that they are dealing with right now, that they're like, you know what, I don't even want to think about that. It's over. It's dead. There's no way this can happen. And the Lord is going to use this to really, spark up and just reinvigorate, what, this is possible. This can happen, just like it did with Sarah. The second situation in the Bible that is kind of highlighted to me is when the prophet told one of the kings who was over a land that was dealing with famine. I mean, even to the point where it was getting into cannibalism and stuff like that, I believe, that 1 measure of flour will sell for a shekel. Now, even the lowest food was selling for a lot of money. That's how great the famine was in the land. But the most basic thing in that land, he was saying this time tomorrow, it will sell for a shekel. And the guard of that king said, even if heaven opens up, I don't even believe that this can happen. That's how unbelievable it was at the time. But who knows that God had designated 4 lepers who were cast out of the city to make this happen. And you can read more about that in 2 Kings. But they went literally from famine to abundance because of one word from the Lord. And, the third example that I want to give is regarding when the prophet Elisha had gone to the woman who had tended to him, who had, built a home, a house, a little room on her house or whatever, and made sure that he had what he needed when he came through town or whatnot. And basically he was like, you've done all this for me. What can I do for you? And she didn't ask for anything. And he said, well, I see that you don't have a child. And so he told her, by this time next year, you will be holding a son. And that is exactly what happened. And so I want to just tell you guys, if you are dealing with hopelessness, you're dealing with a situation that is dead, you've been hoping for a while, probably like Sarah, probably like that lady, all those people that lived in that city that was famined, God can resurrect. God can resurrect. And so I'm going to go ahead and get into the 4 points that, kind of God downloaded to me that we needed to do in order to position ourselves to actually come into what he would have for us to next year, and even the transformation, that we can have. And so the first thing that he laid on my heart was obviously prayer. Everything starts with God. We want to be in unison with him. We want to be on one accord with him. And so we need to seek him. And we want to make sure that we're not just pulling stuff out. Everybody has stuff that they want. Everybody has things that they want to see change in their life. And he also wants to see change in our life, for the better. And so we want to make sure that as we are praying about different things that we want to see transformed, that he is saying, yes, that is, something that I want to do in your life right now. That is something that, he's given you the green light to proceed about. Because once you have all of heaven on your side, let me tell you something. All you have to do is get into alignment with it. And so if you are seeking something, wanting something, you believe that the Lord is showing you something to believe for in this season, take it to him. And even if you don't hear a yes or a no, the Bible says that the peace that passes all understanding shall be our compass. And so that peace that passes all the understanding that the world has to give can be your compass, even if you're not getting a solid yes or a solid no. So if you have that peace, let me tell you, his peace is always a go for me. And so when you get that peace or you get that yes, then you can do the second thing. And the second thing has to do specifically, let me just say this. This second thing is absolutely the most critical part. This is absolutely the most critical part because we need to get it settled in our hearts. And when we get it settled in our hearts, then there is nothing that can stop us. God has said yes, and we need to get it settled in our hearts. And that is where the combustion happens, right? And so we need to get that thing settled in our hearts. And what does that mean? That means that we are so rooted and grounded in believing that that is what he has for us, that it is absolutely, unequivocally, nobody and nothing can move you off of it. Not what anybody says, not any circumstances. It doesn't matter what things look like. It doesn't matter how long it goes. Listen, faith is one of those things that it does not consider time. Faith does not consider time. When you have a resolve in your heart, you cannot be moved no matter what happens. And that's where I've seen people kind of get it wrong. And even me, I've done this kind of the opposite way, where I will move on to step number 3, which is declaring and decreeing and speaking those things forth before I've had it settled in my heart. And what I realize is that when we do that, when we start speaking forth things that we're believing for or wanting for, before we have that thing settled in our heart, after God has said, yes, go, this is yours or whatnot, then what happens is that we speak those things forth, but over time, because it's not rooted and grounded in our heart, we start wondering, we start wavering. And what happens? All of those things come out of our mouth. Proverbs 6:2 tells us that we are taken and that we are ensnared by the words of our mouth. It's so important that we get these things settled in our heart. And it is so important that we believe it and that our mind, our mouth, and our heart are in alignment as we are walking this thing through. And, Jesus said in Mark 9:23 that anything is possible for him who believes. And so we have to believe it first. We have to get rooted in it first. He also said in Mark 11:24, I believe, that if you are praying, believe you can have those things and they will be yours. And so believing is so pertinent. It is so important that we believe what we are going to be asking for, what we are going to be speaking forth, what we are going to be declaring. Before it goes out of our mouth, our heart needs to be settled in it. And it doesn't matter if we need to meditate on the word of God, if we need to meditate in our heart, in our mind on the promises of God for a month, for 2 months. It is imperative that we have it settled in us, because if we don't and we start speaking those things forth and we start wavering because we're looking more at the circumstances because it's not settled in our heart, everything that you have already spoken forth and built up and established in the spirit realm, what you're going to do is start tearing that stuff down. The momentum that you started in your declaration will start being torn down because it was not established in your heart. And let me tell you something. I have done this many times before I recognize, listen, you got to have this thing settled in your heart before you start speaking stuff forth. I used to do this all the time. And let me tell you where it ended up. I would get frustrated and then I would throw my hands up and I'd be like, you know what? This isn't even happening. This isn't even working. Our heart and our mind was not in unison with our mouth. We have to get it settled in our heart first. And that's what brings me to number 3. We absolutely have to make sure that we are declaring the words forth. I always talk about Proverbs 18:21 and how death and life is in the power of the tongue. Have to have it grounded in our heart. But when we start declaring those things forth, when we start speaking those things forth, and we are in unison with our mind, our mouth, and our heart, then that is when the combustion occurs. That is when the real bomb drops. That is when we really start seeing the power move forth, because there is nothing that can stop you when God has said yes and given you a green light. When your heart is settled and you are established and rooted in that thing that God has given you the green light on, and then you start declaring it, you have, for lack of a better term, the 3 power. The final thing is that we take practical steps to prepare. How do we do that? Well, if you're believing the Lord for a house and you know that this house is going to be fabulous, it's going to be not 1, not 2, but 3 steps up from where you are now, you're not going to want to take the junk in your current place to that new house. So you're going to take practical steps to do what? Get rid of that stuff. Clean that stuff out. Give it away. Put it in the trash. You are not going to want to take that to your new house. What else are you going to do? You're going to probably want to price furniture. You're going to want to figure out how you want your new house decorated. You're going to want to figure out even your finances as it relates to your new home. So practical steps, because you know what? When we're in expectation and we know that we are all in alignment right here, we're going to do what's necessary to make sure that we can just step right on in, slide right on in. We're not going to be figuring stuff out at the last minute. We're not going to be like, oh, I didn't realize that I would have to get furniture. All of that stuff is going to be taken into account. And we even see this with mothers. You know, every mother who knows that they are pregnant and that they are going to be bringing a baby forth in a couple of months, they start nesting. And it doesn't matter if it's a human mother. It doesn't matter if it's a mother in the wilderness. You know, I love these wilderness documentaries on animals in the wilderness. It's so interesting. And you see the moms, they are preparing. They're getting that nest ready. They're getting that little burrow in the ground ready. They are preparing to bring those babies forth. And so it is for us, as we know that we are going to be stepping into new places and new realms in our life. You know, one thing that I did when I made several transitions or whatever is figure out what I would need for where I was going. What do I need for where I was going? One of the things that I started doing when my business went from one client to other clients and knowing how to manage my time was, yes, I believe for multiple clients, but then I had to manage multiple clients. So I had to figure out, okay, listen, when you do get multiple clients, this is exactly what you need to do. You need to have this in order. You need to have that in order. This is how you need to prepare. You know, nobody who is wanting for greater and gets greater should be shocked at the bigger responsibility with the greater, right? And so there's a responsibility that comes with the greater. How are you going to manage that responsibility? Taking the practical steps on a framework. And of course, it can tweak, you know, stuff is not always going to roll out the way we want it, but at least we've thought about it, we're prepared for it, and we're going to be aware as far as what we need to do to move forward. And so those are the 4 steps that I wanted to share. So listen, I hope that this encouraged you. Please remember the steps. Please go before the Lord and ask Him if there is anything that He wants to make sure that you are transformed in, transitioning into for this new season to come, because there is a grace upon this season. And I don't want anybody to miss out on it. Those who follow the Lord should be stepping into everything that He has for them. And so remember the steps: to pray and ask the Lord. Secondly, to let it be grounded and settled in your heart. Third, to make sure that you are speaking those things forth, declaring it, decreeing it. And fourth, take the practical steps to expect that you will be walking into it by this time next year. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. I really would appreciate that. Share this with anyone else who might need encouragement. You know, as I said on a previous video, we just came into the biblical new year about a month ago, and so all of this stuff is really a good time to share with others who you know are believing the Lord for something as well. And if you are not subscribed yet, please subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next video. Bye.